So here we go, everybody. Welcome to Meet the Oppo, the series where I get the lowdown on Town's next opponent, which is Shrewsbury Town at Portman Road in League One. And I'm joined by Nick Southall from BBC Radio Shropshire, the sports presenter who covers them week in, week out. Nick, it's a pleasure to have you on. How's things?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. Very good for people that follow Shrewsbury Town this season. It's been a roller coaster ride. I think Shrewsbury are regarded as probably the dark horses to sneak into the top six. It's getting harder. They've been on a brilliant run of form. The problem is, so as everybody in the top six, it is so hard to break into there. And you look at the kind of clubs like Ipswich, Portsmouth, Plymouth, Derby, Barnsley. It is such a high-class top six, ex-Premier League clubs in there, Championship, Sheffield Wednesday. So it would be certainly an upset if Shrewsbury could get into there. Certainly, money-wise, they're nowhere near in budgets to those kind of clubs. But it's been a fantastic season so far.
Yeah, it has. I know a lot of people doing their season previews, they put Shrews down as dark horses because some of the signings they made was very good. And but let's recap the last few months because it's been a bit of a mixed bag of results in the last five. But a good draw against Derby after coming from behind, but then six straight wins in February and Jan. So it's been a mixed bag, but ninth in League One, doing all right.
Yeah, and at the start of the season, had you offered Shrewsbury fans the chance of finishing in the top 10, then they would have grabbed it. That would be a very successful season. If we go back to Christmas, that was where they were building up some momentum going into the Christmas games, but then suffered 3 losses and it didn't go as well. But to be fair, quite a number of things went against them. They weren't getting the rub of the green. They had a number of players sent off in that time, and most of those red cards ended up being rescinded. The problem is it's already done the damage during the games themselves, and deserved more during that period as well. They weren't playing that badly, but then to have the run that they had in January was phenomenal. Unlucky that run came to an end. Got a good draw at Exeter, but the winning streak came to an end. Got a fantastic draw against Derby and could have beaten Derby away. Unlucky to have been behind as they were in that game, but to come back as they did and absolutely outplay Derby in the second half. And yeah, it's been a very good 2023 so far. They've put themselves in with a chance of getting into the top six. A really good win against at the weekend against Morecambe, which a difficult opposition. So they are in a reasonable position regards trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And you've sort of mentioned already, but what is the current mood then with the fans and Steve Cotterill? Of course, he was appointed back in November 2020. He's had some health issues, of course,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but he's bounced back this year and he's doing really well. And I'm sure fans, as you said, they'll snap their hands off for a top, 10 finish, 18th last season. But yeah, I'm sure all good at the moment.
Yeah, already bypassed the total number of points that they picked up last season. Steve Cotterill was gravely ill, had COVID, was in hospital. And I think that people don't probably realise how bad he was and how things could have been very different. So firstly, great to see that Steve Cotterill's returned to full health. And we are starting to see the impact of having a healthy Steve Cotterill has on the club, because the fan base love him. He has reignited the fan base since, dare I say, Paul Hurst. And I know it's might be an interesting name to throw in there, but before he came to Ipswich, of course, he was with Shrewsbury, and he performed miracles to get into the playoff final that year in League One. But that raised expectations within the fan base regarding what it can do, and actually probably unrealistic expectations, because again, financially, they are not one of the big teams in the league, and money talks, really. So I think that Steve Cotterill has re-engaged the fan base after a difficult couple of years. I think it was difficult for the managers in between. John Askey inheriting a squad that Paul Hurst had, but that was being dismantled by either Hurst taking them to Ipswich or the loan players went back off. That they had Ben Godfrey that returned and obviously is doing really well in the Premier League now. And Sam Ricketts as well did an okay job. But Steve Cotterill's come in, and we've got that sense of a real togetherness. There's a great camaraderie with the players and that connection with the fans as well. And this group of players have a never say die attitude. The number of times when you think they've been out of games or they're not going to get any points from games, and yet they've got late winners or late equalisers, shows you just the strength of character that they've got. So, that's all led by Steve Cotterill, one of the most successful managers in the EFL when you look at his record. And it's a project. It's a project at Shrewsbury, and it may take time to get to ultimately where he wants to be, but they are getting better and better season on season since he's been here. And a real sense that they are on a journey, and why can't they get into the Championship at some point in the next few years?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you mentioned it already, the players. As I said, some great signings in the summer, very experienced
Yeah.
signings. Let's bring up the last 11 against Morecambe, a 3-1 win at home. And I want to straight away talk about one player in particular, Luke Leahy, the captain, top goal scorer. 8 of them have been penalties out of the 11 he's scored. But how important is he to Shrewsbury?
Well, Luke Leahy, predominantly used to be a left-sided defender, but it was quite clear when he came to Shrewsbury that actually his best position was in midfield, because his control of the game is exceptional. His vision, his ability with a range of passes, he's very good with his tackles. His positional sense is very good. I think having the captain's armband has really brought out the best in Luke Leahy. As you say, he's been exceptional from the penalty spot, hasn't missed a penalty, touch wood, so far this season. And he is really the standout player, in my view, for them this year in what is a very good squad. He got Player of the Month award not long ago in League One, and that is a great testament to his character. So I think Luke Leahy's been an outstanding revelation for Shrewsbury, and he's quickly become a crowd favourite.
Definitely. I don't want to jinx it already for Town fans, but if you get a penalty, Luke Leahy will be taking on Christian Walton in goal, and Christian Walton has saved his last 2 penalties.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting head-to-head if that does happen. We shall wait and see.
Which
But
way
let's talk
does
about
he dive?
Yeah? Ooh,
Which way
yeah.
does he go?
Oh, depends, really. Depends. I think the last one was left. I think it was left. Where does Luke go? Or you're going to keep that?
I can't
Keep
tell
it to
you that.
yourself. Yeah, definitely very true. I think Luke will not be happy if he finds out that you've been telling his secrets. Well, there we go. But let's talk then, Nick, about the rest of the team. Some other great players. Matthew Pennington, a former Town loanee. Actually, Paul Hurst signed him on loan during that relegation season. But I'm a good player for this level. And Che Dunkley as well. Jordan Shipley, Tom Bayliss. I'm naming them all, really. But take it away of the players I've mentioned and any other players we should look out for.
Yeah, well, look, it'd be very unfair to leave any of those names out. So I'll quickly go through it. And starting off in goal, Marco Morosi. I thoroughly believe that he's one of the best keepers in the league. He's an outstanding shot stopper. His command of the penalty area is brilliant. His kicking is very good as well. So I think that for a free signing that they got from Coventry City, Steve Cotterill's told me in the past that he thinks that's one of his best signings since becoming Shrewsbury manager. And he's a brilliant goalkeeper. They have a very solid foundation. So Normally, it's 3 centre halves, although the formation has changed in recent weeks. So there's no guarantees they're going to go in with that same shape. But if you look at the defenders that have featured most this season, Tom Flanagan, Northern Ireland international, tall, strong, very good with the ball at his feet. For somebody of his height to have the ball control that he's got is very good. Came from Sunderland. Che Dunkley heads everything, whatever's in his way, own players. He'll get his head on it, and he's, I think, as a footballer, really developed under Steve Cotterill, as quite a number of these players have. They've got better after the coaching they've received from Steve Cotterill, because he does a lot of work on the training ground with them. And as you say, Matt Pennington, just the all-round defender, very good in both boxes. And then if they go with wing backs, and I say, there's no guarantee that they will, but the wing backs at the weekend were Taylor Moore, of course, who, Taylor Moore's been somebody that can play in all sorts of different roles. He's somebody that can play midfield, can play in the centre of defence. But Shrewsbury had a couple of injuries right at the start of the season. George Nurse, a defender, had an ACL injury. Then they lost Dan Udo, a striker, with an ACL injury as well. And Taylor Moore has really been the person, Mr. Versatile, that without him, Shrewsbury would have been in a bit of bother, because he's adapted into all these different positions. And he may not have played that many games had George Nurse been fit enough to play this whole season. But he took his chance brilliantly coming in on loan from Bristol City. And, he's been a fantastic signing for Shrewsbury. With the formation that they had at the weekend, it is slightly different when you look into the midfield. So Winchester is a holding midfielder, very calm on the ball. Just orchestrates really what Shrewsbury are about in that midfield. Gathers from the defence, moves the ball very quickly, but he mops up defensively as well very well. So his positional sense is very good, and he just runs and runs and runs. You've got Luke Leahy in that midfield as well, who we've spoken about. Jordan Shipley can either play in midfield or at wing back. And again, Jordan Shipley, ex-Coventry, a very good footballer. He's capable of scoring goals as well. So Shrewsbury have got a number of players that you're not just relying on the forwards to score, but when managers talk about generating goals from all sorts of positions, that's what Shrewsbury have got. They've got a threat in lots of different positions. So Shipley's very good. Tom Bayliss playing in an attacking midfield role, very elegant on the ball. I think this season he's also added to his game a real improvement out of possession. So he knows exactly what he's meant to be doing. That's just from being drilled on the training ground. So he's developed that side of his game. But again, somebody who's very capable of scoring goals from long range as well. So he's good. And the front two, Raquel Pike, well, it looked like his time at Shrewsbury Town was over, really, a season or two ago. He was put on a long contract, had a bad injury, so we didn't see much of him to start with in his Town career. Then when he did play, was really lacked any kind of impact or influence. But again, Steve Cotterill has brought out a completely different side to him. He can play well up front, but he can also play well at right wing back. He brings pace. So again, a vastly improved player. And Rob Street has missed out in recent weeks, but came back in, started against Morecambe, and scored a really good, typical goal poacher's goal at the weekend. But again, and somebody else who's lively with pace and just runs and runs. So it's a very hard-working team. It's a very honest team, and a side where these players won't back out of challenges. They'll put their bodies on the line. So they'll try and make it as tough for Ipswich as they can.
Yeah, I can imagine. Of course, the last time we met was back in August, and Town, of course, won that game. I'd say maybe confidently. You know, that they won 3-0 back at Shrewsbury. Of course, a lot's changed since then for both sides. But how are you feeling going into this one, Nick? You know, how's the away form been for Shrewsbury? I think what my stats, no away win in 4. Something that doesn't mean stuff. But on the road, anything different that Steve Cotterill brings to Shrewsbury when they go somewhere?
No, I think you'll be surprised that they won't turn up at Ipswich just to sit behind the ball, soak up pressure, and look to hit on the counter attack. You know, you mentioned those stats for away games. It hasn't felt like that watching them. I think they've just been very unlucky. You know, they deserve something from the Accrington game. So I think that they haven't quite had the rub of the green away from home. So I think they'll go there full of confidence. And, you know, Steve Cotterill, I think this year has won a lot of fans in the Shrewsbury fan base because he's opted to go for those positive options. Even at Derby, you know, he was the one to make the first positive substitution to try and put pressure on Derby and take the game to them in their own backyard, you know, and it worked. So I think that, of course, it's always going to be that first 20 minutes or so. If they can go 20 minutes, 30 minutes without conceding a goal and try and make it frustrating for the home fans, then it makes it a lot easier. So they'll be very well organised. They'll have a game plan in what they want to do, and it could be a tight game. I think the key is not conceding too early.
Very true, very true. I'm actually excited for this game. You know, we have a big crowd at Portman Road, 26 plus. I'm sure Shrewsbury will bring a decent away following as well,
Yeah.
Nick. But how are you feeling going into this game then? Town on a very good form at the moment. Ipswich Town, not Shrewsbury Town.
Yeah.
Both teams doing okay, of course. But yeah, what do you reckon then? Town, of course, 6 clean sheets in a row, club record, 5 wins in a row, backed by a big support, but it should be a very entertaining game.
Look, it's very hard, and you know, and if you ask most Shrewsbury Town fans, they're probably not expecting much. But this group of players is quite unique. You know, that you go through spells, and you would have had this as an Ipswich fan, that you've got some teams that you have more of a connection with than others, and you know, we all have our favourite eras of the clubs that we support. And I think this is one of those eras for Shrewsbury, that this is a particularly close, you know, group of players that hold each other to account, but they are extremely close. And it's very similar to the type of team bonds that Steve Cotterill built when he got success at Notts County, when they were promoted from League Two, when he had success at Bristol City as well, and obviously the promotions with Cheltenham. So there is something about this group where it is very hard to write them off. All the stats would say Ipswich are in brilliant form. You're going into their territory, massive crowd. Well, of course, you're not going to be favourites to get anything from the game. I think Shrewsbury can get something from the game. My prediction would be a draw. And I don't think that's overly unrealistic. I think they'll make it as hard as they can for Ipswich.
Just realised I moved myself and amateur hour there, Nick. Amateur hour. But yeah, I agree with you there. I think it will be a tight game, and yeah, maybe the first goal will be the very important one to see who will be victorious in the match. But Nick, thanks so much. Some great insight there. Any other business, any other notes you want to mention? Any other little thing we should know about? Any players in particular?
No, I think they do have strength on the bench as well. The one player that we haven't mentioned, well, there's two players. Christian Sadie, striker on loan from Bournemouth, very good with his back to goal, very strong on the ball. So once he's on the ball, he's hard to knock off the ball. And I think that he had a slight strain last week, so we're not sure if he's going to be fit. Killian Phillips as well, who's been out injured, a midfielder coming in on loan from Crystal Palace. And that run of good form in January coincided with him coming into the team. I don't think there's no surprise that there was an upturn in form since he came in. It's not purely down to him because all the players have been outstanding. But Phillips is a very strong, athletic footballer, very good again on the ball, good range of passing. It's just a 360 kind of footballer that has everything. And in my view, a Premier League footballer in the waiting, an exceptional talent. But he's been missing with a head injury the last few weeks. So if he plays, and they'll be hoping that he's fit, then he could prove to be the difference. But they do have some strength in depth. And after all the injury problems they had at the start of the season, injury-wise, they've been a bit better recently, apart from the last week or so when Sadie and Phillips have been out. So if they're fit, then that increases Shrewsbury's chances of maybe getting something from the game.
Indeed. We shall wait and see. Well, Nick, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching. Get ready for an entertaining game, I'm sure, this Saturday. If you're going, enjoy it. If you're not, follow the game with us and check out Nick at BBC Radio Shropshire for any Shrewsbury Town news. Bye for now.